Yeah, okay. I'm just really concerned about, am I doing this right? I'm scopophobing hard.
Yeah, just go with the flow.
Okay, David, I'm going to say that to you. Hello and welcome back to season 2 of the Divergent AF podcast. I am lucky enough to have a guest, David, and if you had listened to my season 1, David was a guest in an episode back then, and we had a really good chat about scopophobia, which is the fear of being perceived. And for the last 20 minutes, I've been sitting here playing with my hair and asking him whether I look like I'm doing a podcast right and if I look like a podcaster. And so that is exactly what we did an episode over. But this time I've got David back on and we've got a very different episode. I am really privileged that David has chosen me to share this story, and we're going to call it Spilling the Tea with David Talks ADHD. A specific tea, if you may. So, David, where should we start? Where should we start on this journey that you've been on?
Well, I think a logical place to start is when I first experimented with opiates, which was sometime in 2020 or 2021. I had a friend that was in a car accident. They had some codeine, offered it to me for $20, and
We always have the most crazy stories of how, like, just a side note, that's just like just another day.
yeah, I gladly accepted, and then I just dabbled with it, and I loved the way that it made me feel, and I set about finding another source. So I was like looking like legal ways to get it. I found out that you can grow opium, which I later did. And then basically you take a large quantity of them. Well, I won't say the process, but so
Yeah.
yeah, but
we're not like criminals, like we're not.
yeah. Well, no, I just don't want to give people ideas. But
No,
yeah,
no.
you can
No way.
you consume a large quantity of poppy seeds in a certain manner, and you're basically drinking opium. And
Yeah.
then because I was able to buy it from a food store, well, I just got hooked on it and kept buying it.
Yeah, so I want to say that when we first got talking through Instagram, because that's what I do, I collect a lot of Instagram friends like Beanie Babies. Don't cut the tags off Beanie Babies. But you just told me your story, and my first reaction was like, wow, can you get opium in New Zealand? Or like poppies? I was just more fascinated. I wasn't like, oh my gosh, like you were a junkie or whatever, by all means is probably the majority of the world's kind of view on things like that. I was more fascinated. You've only recently come out with, I guess, what's really been going on with you. I remember just seeing you do your post and just your kind of change in your demeanor, like a weight had been lifted off your shoulders, because it is scary sharing that kind of stuff, especially around addiction or drugs or whatever, because, there are judgy mofos out there.
Yeah, and
yeah.
I think the key thing is when people think addict, they think of a dysfunctional addict, someone who's stealing and just not taking care of themselves. Whereas, so that was my concern, is people are going to view me as this person. And so I'm a fairly functional person. I was self-medicating. And so I liken it to vaping. Everyone's vaping these days, and it's an acceptable addiction.
Legal, bro.
It's just opiates. Like it just makes me feel better, sort of thing. Wasn't really ruining my life. I had the money to pay for it. Yeah, didn't. If anything, I felt that it made me a more productive person.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I remember one time having this conversation of, you'd wake up in the middle of the night and it's like, I can't be sober in this world. Like, I gotta go grab a Valium, or like, and I cracked up because I know exactly what you mean, like whether it's, ADHD medication or, Valium or like whatever it is, like alcohol, doesn't matter. It's like, we can't exist here without something in our system, because we just find out hard to assimilate, Yeah. But it's like doing it to function. I know what you mean by that. It's not like you're over there having a party or binging.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like you're doing an email.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's another analogy, is that it's simply like a pharmaceutical drug that a doctor would prescribe. That's the way I was using it. I took this medicine and I felt that it made me a better person. It made me able to manage the stresses of life better at the time, the way that a doctor might prescribe Ritalin to someone else. Ritalin didn't work well for me, but that's what it was like. It was it was self-medication. That's the way I viewed it.
It is. And I think actually most addictions are essentially people self-medicating, whether they're in a lot of pain, emotional pain, or they find it hard to function in like the society that's been built that's not really built for neurodivergence. We're all just trying our goddamn best, really. So just skipping back, when were you diagnosed with ADHD? Was that before or after?
It was after, slightly after. I got diagnosed with ADHD in about August 2021, and I had started using the poppy seeds in maybe March, but I wasn't using the quantities that I was at the end of 2021. So I was early in. I'd become a daily user, but the quantities were still quite low at that point. Yeah. And I don't think the gravity of my situation had dawned on me. I was kind of in denial about it. I was like, oh, I use this every day. And I was almost felt like, is it just placebo? But then I couldn't stop.
Yeah. So So, how did you so we can cover the basis of the ADHD, because that's what really links us together in the first place. Did you suspect, or, were you one of those people that had to get on a waiting list and you had to just get confirmation, or did you go there and you're like, I don't know what's wrong with me? Like,
I had suspected it, and I think I'd suspected it for quite a long time, maybe since like 2017, maybe even 2015. But I always sort of put it at the back of my mind, because back then I was like, there's no way I can go to a doctor and talk about this, because I didn't used to be open about my mental health or anything like that. I used to keep my cards close to my chest. There's no way I can go to a doctor and talk about this. So I was like, yeah, I probably do, but like, there's nothing I can do about it. And then, it was in 2021. It was, about that March time, I went to the doctor for something else. I was quite sick with a virus or an infection that wouldn't go away. And then I threw that in at the end. I'm like, I suspect I might have ADHD.
Well, I'm here, Yeah.
And he's like, oh yeah, well, I'll refer you to a psychiatrist. And then had to wait a few months, and it was a fairly straightforward process. So I guess in my case it was quite smooth, and I was fortunate for that, because I know it can be quite a difficult process for some.
I think it is these days. I think even when I got diagnosed, like that wave hadn't come in yet, so I didn't have to wait long. Well, one, I didn't know I was going in for, but you hear about the nightmare of the traffic jam these days, and it's really sad. And I just feel actually quite lucky that I wasn't a part of that wave.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. And so going back to the poppy seed tea, how quickly did it get more and more and more and more? And did you kind of feel it sneaking up, or was it just?
Yeah, it was. It was fairly quickly. I mean, I can't remember the exact timeline, but it pretty quickly became a daily habit.
Yeah.
I vaguely remember I might have only been going through about 1 kg of seeds a week early on, and then I think that went to about 3, and then at my peak I was going through a kg or more a day.
So much? So just to put that into perspective, how much does that yield? Like 1 kg of seeds yields how much tea?
Probably in a liquid amount, like a litre, and that at my peak was like.
I love it. Yeah.
Enough for like 2 doses in a single day.
Yeah.
But early on it was less than that. I might have only needed like a quarter, 250 mils or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's hard to and then to like translate that into like the equivalent of like what that would be in morphine. I think when I ended up in the methadone program, they estimated that a kg of poppy seeds is roughly 30 milligrams of methadone, and methadone is 3 times stronger than morphine, so it's roughly 90 milligrams of morphine. And I think like...
Sorry, my face is like this because I'm like, maths.
Well, yeah, it's a lot. I think like...
It's a lot.
Like morphine, a regular dose could be as low as like 10 milligrams. An average dose might be 20 milligrams. And I was probably using like close to 100 milligrams of morphine a day. But yeah, and it's just like, I think it's really interesting. I think brain chemistry.
Yeah.
Like for me, you hear these stories about people overdosing and stuff like that, or they just like totally like whacked, like they fall asleep,
Yeah.
stuff like that. I never had any of that, and I think
Yeah.
it's much like me with alcohol.
Yeah.
You hear this, you see this with alcohol. People have 2 drinks and they're like, oh,
Yeah.
have 5 drinks and they're vomiting.
Yeah.
And I can count the number of times that I vomited from alcohol on one hand in my life, and I've drunk a lot of alcohol. I just think I have naturally, my brain can take large quantities of these drugs, and I get an effect, but it's nowhere near as intense as the effect that some other people get. Yeah, if that makes sense.
No. It makes sense. It like speaks to my soul. I've always felt real like Frank the Tank, because it takes so much for me to just like feel something that would make someone like really high or really drunk, and I'm just like, is that it? You know? And it's just like really frustrating and unfulfilling, because it would be really good if, you know, you could just get away with 1 or 2 drinks. It's like I probably just come up to like the baseline of like normalcy.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's definitely our brains, because I know just a lot of ADHD or neurodivergent people that it's like we need a lot in the system to like, oh, I feel something now, you know? Yeah. And I remember like a while ago you were telling me about this kind of research about, was it opioid receptors?
Yeah, and autism?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's some fascinating research out there. I think it's fairly minimal. It's limited, the amount of research, but there is good case study that I read about someone who, it sounds like they had, I guess, quite debilitating autism. They were an adult and they couldn't hold down a job. They were living with their parents. I think they were, roughly 40 years old. So they were high needs. They were a high needs autistic person.
Yeah, okay.
And then they stumbled across buprenorphine, which is another opioid, and they started self-medicating with that. All of a sudden, they were able to hold down a job, they were able to go out and get their own place, and they were able to function like a regular person. And then their supply got cut off, and they went back to being high needs again. They lost their job, they had to move back in with their parents, and then they were able to get back on the buprenorphine, and they went back to being good. And so that case study was essentially, saying, well, there's the link between autism and the opioid system in your brain. And that's not the only case. There is other studies out there, but again, limited, but it's certainly a possibility that there is a link between the opioid center in your brain and autism. And I can certainly say that opioids had a profound effect on me, and where I felt like, oh yeah, I'm more normal now, essentially. I wasn't getting high. I was now, it's just now I feel like I
and the will,
right? Opioid system in your brain makes socializing rewarding. So if you think about humans, we're social creatures, and it used to be, we still are, but
with
historically,
the right one,
with the right one, but historically it was incredibly important. It's less important in the modern, because you can survive without people. Back in the day, you had to live in tribes, and if you didn't, you were kind of screwed. So basically being around people, your brain sends out feel-good chemicals, opioids, to say, this is good, keep doing this. But that is potentially missing in autistic people, and that's why you hear, or it seems, that autistic people tend to be less sociable. There is, I won't say there's conclusive evidence, but it's theorized that, again, that this connection, autism, opioid link, that's potentially why autistic people tend to find socializing less rewarding, or struggle with people and things of that nature. And again, this is a generalization. It doesn't necessarily mean every autistic person. But I can say that where I am now, having decreased my dose of methadone from 50 milligrams to 20 milligrams, I certainly feel a lot less sociable than I once did. And it's hard to say, because is this just because I'm still in like a withdrawal process, or is this sort of me just going back to my default nature where, So it is interesting. It'll be interesting. And I want to give myself, a really good chance, a year or so, clean to really readjust to life and see how I function, and how does my life differ from when it did on the 4 years that I used opiates and opioids.
Were you on the T for 4 years?
I was on the T from 2021 to 2024, and then methadone.
Okay, so when you look back on those 3 years, what improved in your life and what didn't improve, if you can reflect on it?
Yeah, that's a good question. And honestly, it changed throughout. So I think early on, it was more about executive function. I felt like I was able to concentrate more, sit in front of a computer more, stuff like that, get myself to do boring, monotonous tasks more, stuff like that. So it was really about, executive function more than emotional regulation and stuff like that. Although it did definitely, it definitely made me feel like better. I got that dopamine boost and stuff like that, although that dissipates over time. But I think from last year, and especially once I got on the methadone in about May last year, it was more of a social effect where I definitely, and so it's really hard to actually say whether this is the drug or whether this was just me making progress and evolving as a person. I really want to make a large group of friends, and I was really trying to fit in, and I felt like, I know, and it sounds, I'm not, but I really, and because for most of my life, or for most of my 20s, I was a pretty irregular person. I was a pretty atypical person, and my only social life really revolved around alcohol, and I had like bad social anxiety and stuff like that. And then over the past year, I sort of like got on top of all that, and now it's like, now I really want like a normal life. Like I want to have the friends. I want to be going out doing all this stuff. And I really wanted to do it. I really did, and it felt like something was missing. I felt like quite lonely because I didn't have enough of it. I had bits of it, but I didn't have it as much as I wanted. And I started going out to bars by myself and all sorts of stuff like that. It was amazing, like the progress.
I still can't even. I couldn't do that.
I know, like most, I would say, even people who don't struggle with social anxiety, or people, and certainly not people who are autistic, many people would struggle with going to a bar alone, and it was super scary doing it the first couple of times.
Unless you're like a date raper, but you weren't.
Yeah, no, it was super nerve-wracking the first few times that I did it, but like that's how like committed I was to like trying out and going to meet people and build this big social life.
Yeah.
And now I'm sort of like over all that sort of stuff, and like I don't want to do much of that stuff anymore. I do want people in my life, but I really only want a small circle. I want people like you, people who I can really connect with you on a deep level.
Yeah.
And and I don't want to be
people, you know.
Yeah, the right people, and also the right setting. Like I don't want to be going out to bars and stuff very often. I'd much rather just a quiet chat, things like that. Low stimulation environment.
Yeah.
And so how much of this is just the natural evolution of me as a person, and how much of this was it actually the opioids, in particular perhaps the methadone more than the poppy seed tea, was actually sort of changing my brain. And again, there's that potential link between the opioid system and sociability being rewarding. And now that I'm way down on my dose, and I'm essentially in a state of mild withdrawal, I'm like, I don't want to be out and about doing that stuff. And it's not that social anxiety has come back. Like I'm absolutely fine. Like I can still go out to the shops and go out and function perfectly normally. It's just that there's a lot of stuff that I was doing that I don't want to do anymore. So
and that's cool. And then you just own it. I mean, because it's like,
that's the key thing. I think I was trying to become someone I wasn't, even though it felt like I had to. It felt like that was the right path at the time. It wasn't because it just felt like I had to. But now it's like no,
going along with the herd, right?
Yeah, and it just felt like something was missing. Like there was this internal feeling, like it's like, I do want like all this social stuff, and then it's like, sort of just tried to normalize myself to try and appeal to the masses, and it's like, no, I'm a very particular sort of person.
And same here, but you're just like Pinocchio. It's like I just want to be a real boy, and then it's like, it's not that great.
No, I got a
own it?
taste of it. I
Yeah,
got a
yeah.
taste of
Oh,
it,
yeah.
and it's like, yeah, no.
Yeah. So, going back to your tea days, was there any periods where you essentially couldn't get enough, or then you went and you had to go through like a withdrawal? Because
Yeah,
probably I know that like physical withdrawals from opiates is a
it's about as
different
bad
ball
as it
game.
gets.
It's a
Yeah,
real different ball game. So, was there any periods where like you couldn't get any, and you were like,
yeah,
and how many?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So there was. It first happened at the end of 2022. There was a period when there was no supply on the market because some super strong seeds got put out into the market.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
this just goes to show that this is a legitimate thing.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
these seeds were like super strong. So there was a recall,
Wow.
and so they all disappeared. And so I was forced to come off then. And that actually coincided with me getting my wisdom teeth extracted. And again, I wasn't fully aware of like how serious my addiction was at that point. And I actually managed to successfully come off then. And I think it actually
Because you
helped
had,
having
was it
the
because you had
suffering.
drugs though when you had your wisdom teeth
No,
out?
no, I did because I didn't get drugs for my
Even the
wisdom teeth.
after, even the after.
Nah, he said that opiates don't work for nerve pain, and I think there might be some semblance of truth to that.
Yeah.
So no, I didn't, but I think actually like the distraction of the wisdom teeth pain made
Oh
it
yeah.
easier. Yeah. And but that then also did coincide with my poppies that I grew harvested not long after that. So I did come off for
Yeah.
maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and then I had
Like fully off.
fully off, and
Yeah.
I felt like I was reasonably okay. I mean, there was definitely a withdrawal process, and like
Yeah.
I had like diarrhea and stuff, but I thought that was from the antibiotics that I had from
That,
the.
that could happen. Who knows?
Yeah, I think now looking back from having then experienced withdrawal again,
Yeah,
it probably
yeah.
was more the withdrawal than the antibiotics.
How much, what was your, if you can remember back then, like what was your kind of like dosage, daily dosage at that time?
Yeah, I vaguely remember I might have been going through like 3 kgs a week back then, so
Yeah.
probably wasn't. It's hard to say, but it wasn't as high as it was from 2023 onwards. I came off for
Yeah.
like maybe 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Then my poppies bloomed, and then that gave me like about
Yeah.
a month supply,
Yeah.
and then they ran out, and then by then I was able to get more seeds, and then just went back to using
Yeah.
daily, and then I think my dose ramped up,
Yeah.
and then it got up to a year where I was using a 7 or 8 kgs a week, so a kg or more a day throughout most of 2023, and then there was the exact same thing happened at the end of 2023. There was
Wait,
another.
has both times been around like Christmas?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
that's like the best time to go through suffering.
yeah. Yeah, I did want to come off, and so I went through withdrawal at the end of 2023, at the start of December or middle of December. I think it was December the 14th. And
You remember it.
yeah. So I was like, okay, like it was meant to be. I'll push through it. I'll be sick for 2 weeks, and then I'll be fine.
Mm.
But that really wasn't the case. Yeah, I was very sick for about 2 weeks, like terrible diarrhea.
Can you walk it through? Because I don't know. Like,
Yeah,
like you hear about it or you see it on movies and it's like meant to be horrendous.
yeah,
You
and,
know?
and it absolutely is. And it started with just like this horrific feeling of like crushing depression.
Oh,
And at that point, I didn't know that I was in withdrawal because I had found another source of poppy seeds, but it turned out like the seeds had been treated or something. So I thought that I was still using the seeds, but they were essentially no good. They were placebo.
placeboing. Yeah. Okay.
Well, they weren't. They didn't have a placebo effect
Okay.
in my case. But yeah, so I was still using poppy seeds, but they didn't work.
Yeah. Okay.
And so then it started with this like crushing sadness. And I'm like, why do I feel like so sad? And I didn't quite know that I was in withdrawal at that point. And then by the next day, I think it clicked like, oh yeah, like those seeds must not be working, because I started getting more symptoms.
Yeah.
And then there was just, a lot of diarrhea multiple times a day, probably 7 or 8 times a day.
Did you lose any weight? I mean, that's always the benefit of diarrhea, you know?
Yeah, definitely lost weight, and then like insomnia.
No.
Yeah,
That drives you batshit.
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult to get to sleep because just felt super restless.
Yeah.
That's where that term kicking the habit comes from.
Was your
Yeah. For me, it wasn't just my legs; it was just your whole body, like just tossing and turning. And I'd occasionally get to sleep, get a couple of hours here or there, and then I'd wake up with nausea, diarrhea. I'd also wake up and I'd either be freezing, a lot of sweating as well, freezing but sweating, and then I'd layer up, but then I'd feel like I was boiling hot, so it's like that fever effect.
Oh.
Just like, brutal physical and mental effects. That gradually eased over the course of about 2 weeks, and I think I lasted about 16 days in total off. And by that point, like, the physical symptoms had all dissipated, but I just didn't feel right mentally. I just felt incredibly irritable, low mood, depressed, just anxious. Yeah, had to stop drinking coffee.
Like on a chemical
level. Yeah. Couldn't have caffeine because the caffeine made me so jittery. Like normally when I had the opiates in my system, caffeine had minimal effect. But super like anxious and jittery from coffee. And so then I set about trying to find another source, and then did manage to find another source, and then like made sure that they had like lots. I was like, so you've got, like, you're not going to run out, and
I cannot go through withdrawals again.
Yeah. And then lined up another source, and then everything went back to normal for about a month. I think it was the end of January.
Yeah.
And then essentially the same thing happened again, where I got a 12.5 kg sack from this place, but they ended up being, again, the seeds weren't good. They had been treated or something. So I thought like I was using them, but nothing was happening. And then it clicked like, this obviously it's a different batch. They're no good again. And then so I was screwed again because I couldn't find.
Gosh.
Yeah. And then that process was much harder because I didn't have any real optimism. I was like, this time I don't want to come off, like, and I know how bad it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was much worse that time because I had no hope. Essentially, I had no hope. So I just started drinking a lot, doing nangs, just anything I could do to get by. But I was really struggling.
Yeah, it's like a whack-a-mole thing, eh? It's like if you can't, you're just like, okay, well, what do I go do next?
Yeah, and those things helped a little bit, but I wasn't getting what I needed.
Yeah.
And obviously at this point, I realized like I've got like a massive issue. I've got to like, this is like dictating my life essentially.
Sorry, can I just interrupt? When you were going through these withdrawal periods, was there anyone around you that knew?
Friends knew, but limited support.
So you were like going through this crap alone?
Pretty much.
Your family had no.
No, family didn't know. No.
But your friend, I suppose you kind of have to live it to know it as well. But
that's
rough, man. That's rough, mate.
Yeah. It is rough. And then I can't remember how long I lasted like that. Maybe 2 or 3, 4 weeks. And then I sort of like started searching around again. And so not many places were selling poppy seeds at this point because, again, it seems like that there was this recall and then they never really came back on the market. Some places did have them, but they were no good. And then I was like, well, I'll go back to the place where I had been getting them from, and maybe if I try a different batch, they'll be good. So I said, can I try a sample from another one of your big bags.
Yeah.
And they didn't understand why, because they have no idea why I'm buying them.
Passionate about growing poppies.
Yeah, I just said they tasted better or something.
Red wine at a restaurant, you're like,
I
it's good. You
just immediately notice all of a sudden I kind of feel like normal again, I'm not super anxious and depressed, and and so I went back and I bought that 12.5 kg sack, and then they had one more, and that was all. So I had those 2 bags, and then so I was trying to ration. So I was like, if I used 300 grams, 400 grams a day, I can make it last 2 months or something. But then I was like,
I could just imagine the stress of feeling that way.
Yeah, it was just my whole life. And then I'm like, but I'm like, I have to get more because and then it was very hard. It was very difficult to ration because it wasn't, 400 grams wasn't really enough. And then so I would be double dipping, and I'd be like, and then I can't remember which came first, but I was like, well, I've got to do something about this because I'm screwed if I run out again. So I'd read about the methadone program on the internet.
Yeah.
And again, it was one of those things where I'm like, it's scary to make an inquiry about that.
Yeah. I would love for you to step through it, because I don't know, you hear methadone program. I don't know if it's just because I haven't been in that area, but that's so American. Oh, the methadone program. How does it work here?
Yeah.
And what do you do? And was that scary to...
Well, it was scary because I guess this is just sort of the way that I view the world. And it was the same with ADHD.
Yeah.
Seeking ADHD diagnosis. I'm just I didn't think that anyone would take me seriously, or it didn't feel like I deserved help. And again, that's just the way my mind works. It's almost
you're a functioning one, kind of.
Well, no, it's just I feel that they'll think I'm a drug seeker or something.
Yeah.
I tend to forget that these things are actually there to help you, These programs recognize there are people like me who need help, but the way my warped mind works is I view them as I'm not entitled to that help. So I was scared to inquire because I'm like, I don't deserve it, or they're going to think I'm a drug seeker or something.
Yeah.
But I kind of had no option because I'm like, I'd exhausted nearly all my options. So I can't remember which came first, but I booked an appointment with my GP, and I did manage to find another source, and I was able to order 50 kgs of them. So that did provide me a long-term buffer.
You had a little safety blanket.
Yeah. And then I think it's really fortunate that it worked out that way, because if I didn't have that, I think it takes a long time to get into a methadone program.
Yeah. So when you went,
I would have.
Yeah. So sorry. When you went to your GP, was he a long standing GP, and it's oh, hey, by the way, this has been my secret life. And
Right. So he actually, when I was on Ritalin, I think it was in 2022, he sprung me with a random drug test, and it wasn't his doing. He said it was something to do with the government. The government was cracking down on people who take Ritalin. Yeah, and I believe him on that because
really?
I've
never heard of that.
I don't know, but anyway, it happened to me. And because I was using the poppy CT at that point in time on a daily basis, I popped for codeine. And then I kind of, again, I honestly didn't at this point, it sounds ridiculous to say, but I still wasn't 100% sure if I was an opiate addict. I'm like, is this all just big placebo? I'm addicted to just drinking dirty water. Because again, but the effects it had on me weren't that significant. I mean, they were, but they weren't. If it makes sense.
It's kind of I know what you mean. It's almost like the muscle memory. So when I used to smoke back in the day, it was this whole muscle memory of getting up, having the coffee.
Yeah,
and
exactly that.
It's just ritual, the habit.
Yeah, Yeah, but it's not I'm getting super high.
Yeah.
And so it's am I just somehow addicted to just drinking something and its placebo effect? But in the back of my mind, I'm I think there is probably opiates in this. And then so I was really nervous after that drug test. And then about a month later, I got a text from him oh, hey, you need to come in to discuss something. And I was oh yeah, it must have been that I tested positive. for that. And I was like, well, I'll just tell him anyway, because I just assumed like I was going to get my Ritalin prescription taken away. And I was like, I don't want it anyway, because I honestly, I wasn't using my Ritalin. Ritalin didn't work for me.
So sorry, side note. So are you on Ritalin now or anything?
No.
So you just found like it just wasn't your jam?
Yeah, no,
Really?
no, yeah.
Okay.
No,
Yep.
yeah, Ritalin, just very like artificial feeling,
But,
very like on edgy feeling.
Yeah, kind of like gritty,
not,
like, yeah.
yeah, just a very like yucky feeling for me.
No, that's very common. I've heard that from a lot of friends, that, yeah, they've gone through a lot of different ones, and yeah. You never know with people, right?
Yeah, I don't think my brain is wired for stimulants.
Okay,
I'm a downers person.
Yeah.
So I just assumed like I was going in there to get my Ritalin prescription cancelled because
You've been a naughty boy. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just intervened, and I'm like, oh, I don't want Ritalin anymore anyway. It doesn't work for me. And then he never actually mentioned anything about that drug test result.
Really?
And it was right at the end. I said, oh, what about that drug test result? And he's like, oh, yeah, a little bit of codeine in there, but I'd never call you out. I'd never put you on the spot. That whole drug test wasn't to like catch me out. So that confirmed that, yeah, I was, and yeah, the stuff I was drinking did contain opiates. But I didn't tell him that I was using it daily. I just said, oh yeah, I use this poppy seed tea stuff. I didn't say that I was using it on a daily basis.
I'm just a recreational user.
Yeah, and then when I was in full-blown addiction and wanted to get in the methadone program, I was like, do you remember when I tested positive for codeine? Yeah, I didn't tell you the whole story. Yeah, I've been using this poppy seed tea daily. I'm fully addicted to it, and I've had to come off it temporarily, and I can't function, and my life is in limbo because it's all about securing supply and all of this. And he's like, so what do you want to do about it? And I was like, well, I've heard that you can get on the methadone program. And he's like, yeah, okay, I'll make a referral. And yeah, so really straightforward.
Yeah.
And he said about 3/4 of patients that he refers never like go through with it.
Really?
Yeah, that was interesting to me, but I guess it makes sense because a lot of people have probably been made to go there by a partner or family.
Okay.
Like, you're a drug addict, you need help, and they don't actually want help. Yeah, whereas I really wanted the help.
Did you, is that because you got to a point where like you were just, your whole life was consumed with like getting a source, and then it was so unreliable, and it's like withdrawals, and it's like, I can't live like this anymore? Yeah,
and I just knew that I can't function without opiates. So I knew like I've got a massive problem here, because otherwise I'm just going to be living in limbo for the rest of my life, sort of thing. Yeah, because I didn't think I had the strength to sort of come off myself at that point in time. So I'm like, I need help. I need stability.
If you were on a high dose, right? Can't some people die if they just fully?
You can, but it's very rare. It's rare. Yeah, it's much rarer than alcohol or benzodiazepines. I think it's more from,
because you don't hear that, you know.
Yeah, it's more from the people who die from opioid withdrawal. It's from like dehydration, from all the diarrhea and stuff.
Wow.
So that's what it's from. Whereas I think with alcohol and benzodiazepines, it's actually like your brain, like seizures and stuff that can kill you. So it's rare. It's only if you're not really taking care of yourself. It's incredibly physically and mentally addictive. And so it's not, even though the chances of dying from withdrawal are rare, it's the ability to like function and live without it in your system.
Do you mean like the mental rather than like the physical dying?
Yeah. Like that's it. So there's something called post-acute withdrawal syndrome, and this can apply to any drugs.
Yeah.
But I think in particular opiates and opioids, because the profound effect that they have on your brain is it's where you're past the withdrawal, so you're no longer in physical withdrawal, but you don't feel right.
Yeah.
So this can be anxiety, fatigue, depression, all of the above.
Yeah.
So it's like,
and your head, it's like a storm.
Yeah. So it's like you're no longer in the acute withdrawal, but your brain is just not right.
And that's scary.
And that's what I had.
Yeah.
And and so yeah, like I just knew that there was no way at that point in time that I could sort of manage that myself. So I have to get help.
So then you went to your GP, you got referred. How long did it take to, what is the methadone program? Like, do you go to a building or like what happened?
So first of all, got a call from like this
A random number?
No, I can't
Did you
remember
pick it up?
what the number was, but I got a call. I think they're called like Centrepoint or something, and they sort of like they do like the screening process. They just like go over the basics, like your drug usage, your living situation, age, and stuff like that. And then I guess they just sort of confirm like you're like a suitable candidate, and then they refer you to, in Christchurch, Canterbury Alcohol and Drug Services.
Okay.
And they're the ones who sort of run the methadone program. And so that is at a hospital. It's a clinic in Christchurch, Hillmorton Hospital, which is primarily a mental health hospital. And then so I went there for an initial meeting, which I think was, it was it was just a short, they gave me a booklet and had to do a drug test to show that I had opiates in my system. And then so there's that. And then like 2 or 3 weeks later, once that was confirmed, went in for like a full interview, 3-hour interview, where they really dive deep into your life, your upbringing.
Like prove you're an addict.
Well, not necessarily prove, but just to like really get their head around like who you are. And it didn't feel like I was
that
proving.
Really taxing? Like that's a...
No, because I enjoy stuff like that. I enjoy,
We go away.
It's like it'd be like
news.
It's like therapy.
Open
it's
book.
like therapy.
Open book.
It's like therapy.
Yeah.
Like for some people, therapy is taxing, but for me, like therapy is fun. Fun, maybe fun's not the right word, but it's stimulating.
Novel. What's coming next?
I could talk about this stuff all day. So for me it wasn't, but the lady doing my interview did keep apologizing. She's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I know it's a long time." I'm like, "No, it's fine. Like I love this stuff." So it kind of was like,
I'm laughing because I get you. Like
no, it's fine. I'm not
like I could probably be interrogated for a crime I didn't do, and I'd be like,
and
I love this stuff.
I wouldn't even call it an interrogation. It was more, it was like therapy, asking similar, just like really, getting to know who you are. And
sorry, did it feel like quite interesting? I don't want to say nice, but did it feel quite like someone is taking such an interest in asking all these deep questions about me?
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. That
cathartic.
Like most parents, like, your family or your friends don't even know. So it's like, wow, like I'm answering all these deep questions. Yeah,
exactly like that.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, so then there was that, and then she was like, "Okay, well, like you pretty much tick all the boxes, but now I have to make a case to a team of doctors, and they'll be the ones who make the decision."
Oh, it's a real process, isn't it?
Yeah, and unfortunately, their interview was the day before she was taking 2 weeks leave, so
of course.
I had to wait. I had to wait another 2 weeks.
It's our luck, hey? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, God forbid you have a holiday. Like,
The only thing that worried me was, I have a history of binge drinking, and I've been binge drinking when I came off.
Don't we all? Like, I mean, if
but that's a risk factor because of the combination. So it's very risky.
Like I can't name one person that's not a binge drinker at one point in their life or at one time.
That worried me that they may be like, wow, it's too risky for you to be in this program because you might go out and drink heaps and die on top of the methadone. But so that was the only thing that worried me.
Yeah.
But no, it was fine. They accepted me. And again, I think they understand that, like people who are addicted to one drug are probably going to be either addicted or have use other poly drug users. It's better that we actually try and help him with all his drug use rather than say, sorry, you're too risky, go out and keep doing what you're doing. It's like, we'll come into our program and we'll help you with everything sort of thing.
That's good because a lot of people don't view it that way,
Yeah.
Okay, so then when did you officially start on the methadone program?
I think it was in about May 2024, just under a year ago.
May 2024 is a significant month for both of us, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
Remember, I moved out, left marriage, and you got on that. Wow. Okay, you've come a long way, and so you're still on it now, and you made the incredibly courageous decision to be like, I want to get off this and I want to be clean, and it's been effing hard.
Yeah, it has. 50 milligrams was my original dose, and I'm down to 20 milligrams. So, I mean,
which people that like me that wouldn't even understand, but that's like quite a big difference.
Well, I've more than half my dose, so that's going to be big no matter what drug you're taking.
Would that be like having like 20 drinks down to like 5 drinks or something? I don't know. I'm trying to how do you contextualize that? Is it just like a nothing?
I mean, it's difficult to sort of give you an equivalent, but I mean, I'm taking less than half the dose that I was, so it's a significant reduction.
And it's not even been a year?
No.
Is that so? What is I don't know, what is the normal progression of someone going on a methadone program? How long would it usually do you even know that?
Yeah, they say actually they encourage you to be on there for at least 2 years because if you think there are a lot of people, dysfunctional addicts who are going in there. Their life has been very unstable. So these are your people who are on the streets, involved in crime, and probably have all sorts of terrible traumas and stuff.
Yeah.
And so the idea is to give them a stable life.
Okay.
Whereas I already kind of had a stable life, except
it made it better, except for the withdrawals.
Yeah, it's just that I couldn't function without the drug. But in terms of my living situation, finances and stuff like that, I was very stable compared to many people.
Yeah.
So the idea is actually to encourage people to stay in there for 2 years to give them stability, because a lot of these people, their lives have been chaotic, whereas my life actually hadn't been particularly chaotic.
Yeah.
So I guess that makes me somewhat of a different, an atypical patient.
But it was still your decision to.
Yeah, it's always the patient's decisions. They don't ever tell you. They would only ever kick you off if you're repeatedly doing things that are dangerous, like using lots of benzodiazepines or alcohol on top, or selling your prescription, not showing up and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the only reason. Other than that, if you're not breaking rules, it's completely up to the patient. And so many people stay on methadone for life. Many people stay on methadone because it's very hard to come off. It's very hard to come off.
And you're allowed to be on it for life,
as long as you're not breaking rules.
Wow, this is just fascinating to me. I love asking. You know me. I love asking these questions.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Well, it's just there are a lot of it's just fascinating. So. I know that you go to the pharmacy every morning to get a dose, and you can't get given more than that, eh? Like you can't get given like a week's stock.
Not a week. So you can only ever be given two days doses, 2 takeaways in a row. So long term, the max you can get is you'll get 4 takeaway doses a week, but only 2 at a time. So say if you went in on Monday, you get takeaway doses for Tuesday, Wednesday, you go back on Thursday, get a takeaway dose for Friday, Saturday. I go to the pharmacy Monday to Friday and then I get takeaway doses for the weekend. That is pretty limiting, because you're reliant on going to a pharmacy 3 times a week for the rest of your life, and not the
rest of your life, David, because
if you would stay on, if you're methadone, you would have to go to the pharmacy 3 times a week for the rest of your life, and so that's quite limiting.
When you first walked into the pharmacy, what did that feel like, and what did you say? Because I know, just as a woman, and you're like, do you have any stuff for thrush? And they're like, thrush! And you're like, shut up. Was it kind of like that?
I went in there with whatever like paperwork
Oh, okay.
that they given me, and I sort of spoke to the person at the counter, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
like, can you do this? Because they said like every pharmacy can do it, but they can also decline it.
Why?
So,
Why?
well, because a lot of methadone users are not desirable people for lack
They
of.
don't want all the junkies coming in. Like,
Yes,
fucking hell, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Bullshit.
Um,
Okay, anyway.
so yeah, anyway, like she got the head pharmacist, and he's like, oh, we don't normally do this, but you look presentable, so we'll do it. Yeah.
The joke of the fucking humanity. Oh, that pisses me off. Anyway, well, good for you though, because imagine if you had been turned away, then you'd really feel like shit.
Well, no, well, there's other pharmacies that do it.
Yeah,
Like,
but it
yeah,
would still be
yeah,
like, did you do it? Did you look presentable? Did you?
yeah,
No, but like, did you
presentable.
make like a little bit of an effort?
No, no,
Oh,
no,
okay.
just what I normally
Oh,
wear.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Like you
yeah.
weren't going for a job interview.
No,
Okay.
no.
Your head and your timeline, when is your goal that you think you'll be done? And this is all been your decision to drive it, you know, you didn't, yeah, which is very commendable.
So from now, like 15 weeks would be
Yeah.
best case scenario, I think, but it might not be that because there might be times that it's too difficult. I needed to take an extra week or go back up in dose slightly. Throughout this whole process, I actually have never gone back up a dose, but you can do that if you're really struggling. I've just taken an extra week at a certain dose a few times.
So do you
But
drop 1 mil?
at the moment, I've been dropping 2.5 per week,
Per
and
week?
yeah,
You badass.
and but from next week I'll probably drop that to do it to 2. So I'll try and go from 20 to 10 in 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And then from 10 to 0, I'll do it from 1 down. Keeping in mind, like the lower you go in doses, the higher the percentage each drop in doses. So like a 2 milligram drop from 20 to 18 is a 10% drop, but 2 milligram drop from at 10 milligrams to 8 is a 20% drop. So even though it's still 2 milligrams,
Thank God
it's a bigger.
someone is good at maths because it's
Yeah,
not me.
it just so. But it still gets, yeah, the jumps get bigger. So if you think going back to when I was at 50 milligrams and dropping down at 2.5 back at 50, that was a 5% drop.
Yeah.
And now at 22.5 to 20, that was I think there's a 10% drop.
So you feel it more.
Yeah, you feel it more. That, and also just there's like a sort of like a cumulative effect, I guess, as because you're sort of still feeling the drop, the previous week's drop sort of thing. It's sort of like it accumulates because just less and less of this stuff in your system. Because methadone like builds up in your system. It's got a very long half-life, and it gets into your fat cells and stuff like that. So it builds up in your system. And then so like the lower your doses, like the less of it that's built up in your system. So there's less reserves.
Yeah.
So there's just much less of it going around in your system. So that, as well as the fact that the percentage is a bigger drop. But you do feel it. Like from 50 to 30 was pretty easy, but from 30 to 20 has been pretty
it's getting
taxing. Getting lean.
Yeah. So what are you, in terms of what are the hardest side effects of the drop? What do you find the hardest to battle?
I mean, I would say going back before Christmas, it was like the mental aspect.
Yeah.
At that point, actually, I think I was still sleeping relatively okay. So this is when I was roughly at like 30 milligrams.
Yeah.
But mentally, I was just really struggling, craving, I guess, and not feeling normal. And you know, I was dealing with a few other situations at that point in time.
As we seem to do around the holiday period, and that doesn't help. Yeah,
and so I was just in a particularly fragile state of mind. I relapsed on, I think it was December the 9th. So just over the course of a weekend.
But were you dealing with something else at the same time? You know, like emotional?
Well, at that point, I was just dealing with a lot of, I guess, work-related stress.
Yeah.
And I just like, and so like, I guess, yeah, binging on drugs has always been my coping mechanism to deal with stress.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But, a lot of things happened that weekend. And like, it's funny, like something else happened that weekend, which upset me more. But
I
then
know.
like,
It's always a clusterfuck, right?
yeah,
Is it,
but then I'm like, I'm not going to do this again. That was a really pivotal weekend because it just didn't work.
Mm.
I just felt guilty. I shouldn't be doing this. It just solidified in my mind, like, yeah, I can't go to this as a coping mechanism anymore. I'm definitely coming fully off the methadone because at one point, like, I was just sort of trying to decrease my dose. I wasn't fully committed to coming right off, but I'm like, no, like, yeah, I'm going to come right off this, and I'm not going to use opiates as a coping mechanism. And yeah, so
That's a really like hard, courageous decision to make, because I remember,
yeah,
I don't know if it was around that same date, but I was talking to you and I was just like, oh mate, like I know where you are. Being in a
yeah,
real dark place, especially
yeah,
December, is really hard. And I think I just was trying to tell you, didn't
yes,
I made you go to a cold plunge sauna, and
yeah,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
I was like instructing you. I was like,
yeah. I remember.
don't fucking fight me. Just like
Yeah,
go and do this. Like go and do
yeah,
this, because I know where you're at in terms of like it's so hard around that time of the year as
yeah,
well, and
yeah.
I could just really feel for you, because I get it when you're just so alone in something that's so
Mm-hmm.
dark and
Yeah,
you just need help. And I just was like, just don't think, just go and do this, don't argue with
yeah,
me. And
yeah,
like, I know it sounds lame, but it's like you'll look back in 1 year's time and be like, fuck, that was the worst Christmas of my life, or whatever.
yeah,
But it's
yeah.
like,
I
I
know.
believe in you can do
Yeah,
this,
yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so like, I guess it's one of those things where like everything happens for a reason. That
Yeah, but at the
weekend needed to
time,
happen.
you're like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. But that weekend needed to happen because I needed to learn that lesson,
yeah,
and that really changed my mindset. And then so from then onwards, the mental battle has still been difficult.
yeah,
It's still been difficult.
yeah.
There's sort of like this rock solidness to me. There's just no turning back, and I'm fully committed. But now I guess well, I don't know if you'd necessarily call them physical, partially physical, maybe physiological, but like sleep has been really disrupted now.
Maybe like on like
Not
a chemical level, like it's
Yeah. So like, it's certainly still somewhat mental, but sort of different. Like, I'm in the right mindset now,
yeah.
but like my sleep is messed up. Really, so
And
sleep is the biggest one.
and sleep is so hard, because I mean,
Yeah, it's
I have so many problems sleeping, especially if I'm going through something and it's like it like tints your whole vision
yeah,
on like the world, and
yeah,
it does, but
yeah,
it still doesn't like help at the time. It's really so frustrating, people that don't understand insomnia, or like
mm,
and it's really affects your life and the way you view or the way you react to things, and it's a
absolutely,
fucking nightmare. I like, oh my God, I understand. Yeah.
absolutely. So it's more things like that are the biggest challenge. There's that, and so I tend to wake up very early, 5, 6 a.m. I toss and turn, and I just can't get comfortable again. And then so it's just really about counting down the hours until I can go to the pharmacy at 8:30. And so that's really, really difficult. The day I tend to be pretty okay when I'm sort of like focused, watching the stock market, going to the gym, especially when I'm at the gym, when I'm just like occupied. And I really love going to the gym now. Again, that was like sort of a big pivotal change around that December mark where I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go really hard at the
You
gym.
need something, eh? Yeah.
Yeah. And so like, I should probably go back and say like that was the whole driver for initially decreasing my dose of methadone and now getting off it was like health. Because all opiates and opioids significantly decrease testosterone levels, and
Wow.
also slow your metabolism down significantly. I've been really committed in the gym, and I was walking 10,000 steps a day. I'm like, I'm not gaining muscle and I'm not losing fat. Like, what's going on here? And then, yeah, I sort of like pieced it all together and like did a lot of reading. I'm like, oh yeah, like it's just the methadone that's messing up my hormones and metabolism.
I mean,
And
even
so that
looking
was,
at you now, like I haven't seen you visually for a while, but like you look fitter and stronger. You do.
I think I am.
You
I think
you,
I
you
am.
are.
Yeah. I've made like a significant amount of progress in the gym over the past month.
Yeah.
So, and then that's like a real driver. It's like, well, now that I'm actually seeing progress, then it's motivating
Yeah, we
to
got to
keep
get a new
going.
addiction, eh? Like, yeah.
Yeah, and it very much is becoming an addiction for me.
But it's a
And
good one, right?
it's a good one. So the only problem is that you do have to give your body time to rest and recover. So it's on the
We're so all or nothing.
Yeah, and so it's the days that I don't go to the gym, which are particularly difficult, and it tends to be weekends, just
Yeah.
when I have a lot of time and don't have much to do, and then it's like, well, drugs, not opiates, opioids, but it's tempting to drink alcohol. Yeah, so I've got to really break that habit. It's just such like a default mode for me,
When you're alone and you've got a lot of time in your head.
and I haven't been perfect.
No
I
one
haven't
is.
done it anymore.
No one is. And
Yeah,
if they are, they're
but
fucking
but
lying.
but I think I'm getting better at going to those coping mechanisms.
We're all just trying our
Yeah,
best. Like, I get
like
it.
like like last night, I was quite stressed, and I wanted, it's again, my mind was just go to the bottle store, get some alcohol. I resisted the temptation. I'm getting better.
You are, but even if you do have a
Yeah, like
slip up, like that's like
yeah,
there's absolutely
like
nothing wrong with that. And as you said,
no,
you learn more from that. I don't know. I just think like everything you've done is really commendable and really courageous, and especially doing it, alone without support. And then also there was kind of like that fear of telling people
yeah,
to be
that's right.
judged. And I remember just saying to you, like, if people judge you, they're not your people. So fuck
Yeah,
them.
yeah,
And I think, yeah, when you came out and you were open, I could just see like the relief. And then you have had some like amazing reactions and amazing support,
yeah,
because I think,
yeah.
it's not just you.
No, no, it's not. And I tend to forget that, I guess, a lot of people have secrets, whether it be just that they're depressed or they have social anxiety,
Yeah.
or they do have an addiction, and people tend to keep this stuff sort of secret because they're insecurities, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas I sort of wear my insecurities on my shoulder. Yeah, I hadn't come out publicly on Instagram, but I told you almost immediately. As soon as we started talking, and all
Yeah.
my friends had known. It's
Yeah.
not something. Yeah, I'm very open about who I am, what I struggle with, things like that. Whereas I tend to forget. A lot of people actually pretend that they're fine.
Oh my
Like,
God.
oh, like I don't have social anxiety.
Oh no.
Whereas I'm like, yeah, I did have social anxiety. Don't have so much anymore, but yeah.
What I've learned about people, the majority of people, is that when you're really open about your flaws and what's you're struggling with or what you want to improve, it's almost like, that's a really good fucking target to just dump or project all my shit on. And it's like the ones that are pointing the finger, but it's like, hey, you're actually worse than me, or like you're doing that too, or but I've just learned to like actually let it go and just
Yeah,
let them dump
yeah,
any smear campaign on me. And it's like, if you really want to go to war, I've got all the screenshots. I'm a psychopath sometimes. That's what I hate about the majority of people that will judge, but it's because they're so scared the spotlight will be on
yeah,
them. I mean, like even very recently I heard, someone was spreading shit about me to like friends of friends or people I didn't know. And it just was like, I'm not going to come for you yet. I've learned is like, you can't ever change people or how they act. And so all you've got to do is like, I'm such a big like let them theory now. You can't do anything about it. Live for you, because if you live for others, you'll die for yourself. So at the end of the day, the people that matter and are meant for you won't judge you.
yeah. I agree, and I think that's a really important lesson that applies to just
Yeah.
a broader area of life. Like, I think if we take that, for example, to like dating,
Yeah.
it's not about appealing to everyone.
Right.
It's about
Yeah.
like
Putting your best
yeah,
face forward, and it's like, but but then you're gonna have to walk on eggshells
Yeah,
after that, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And if you change, you mold yourself to them, to what you think they'll like. Yeah, it's not
No,
sustainable.
it's not. You lose yourself, and then
And,
yeah,
and also not trying to convince the people who aren't sure on you.
yeah.
Like, don't try and convince them.
No,
Like,
no, 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 no. No, it's
it, it,
yeah,
it, it doesn't work like that. Like, people, they either like you or they don't, essentially.
yeah,
It's as
yeah,
simple as that. Like,
yeah.
if you try and convince them, like, oh, I'm so good at this, I have all this, I have all,
You
I
shouldn't
have
need
all these
to.
achievements.
You shouldn't need
Yeah, like,
to.
it doesn't even work. It just doesn't work.
Not long
It
term,
doesn't
no,
work.
no.
No, like, people, I think that just leads to getting, like, used if you have
Oh, God,
a
yeah,
particular,
as we know. But
yeah,
yeah, I think the whole thing about being like, I hate the word authentic, but I mean just like real you, it's like quite polarizing if you're being
yeah,
really you. So, but then
yeah,
it's quite good because it's like the magnets, it's like it'll push away the ones that are like actually not fucking for you. And the ones that are for you will be like this, you know, and like
e- e-
it's
exactly.
scary. Not most people don't live it. Like they'll talk about
No,
it and they won't live it.
no.
But when like you finally attract like the right magnets and it's like, think, you know, like it does you a favor, you know?
Yeah, it does, and it's not easy,
God,
because
no.
we all want to be liked,
Yeah,
and
yeah, like, let's be
yeah,
honest, like, every human being wants approval, wants to be liked, but
yeah, exactly.
it's like the power to be disliked.
It's difficult. It's still something I'm working on, definitely getting better at. But yeah, I'm
Same,
not
yeah.
saying that I'm the most fearless
I
person in the
don't think
world.
anyone is, if they're honest.
No,
I don't, but I think we've both come a long way.
definitely.
And yeah, I mean, like when I was explaining to you in a really rough patch, and it's like I know where you're at, where it's like this period of like you haven't met the people for like who you are becoming, you
Yeah,
know? So
yeah,
it's like
yeah,
the old you is, you know, like lost those people and you still haven't met your new people yet. And there's this period of like, shit, have I done the right thing? Or like, but it's just like, nah, like at the end of the day, you know, like when you're not being yourself and you've got the wrong people, it's always going to have an expiration date, you know?
yeah,
So,
exactly.
but it's hard.
And
And
I think,
yeah,
yeah, that's very much where I'm at in my life. I'm very much in a transition period where sort of a bunch of things have come to a head at the same time.
as they do. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does seem to be that way.
Yeah.
I was definitely scared of being alone,
Well,
and
it's rough.
it is. But
Yeah.
I've sort of become comfortable with it, and I'm in the thick of it now, and I've sort of accepted, you know.
I think it's like one of the best skills you can ever master is being comfortable being alone. And
Absolutely.
yeah, it's scary, but I think you just learn so much about yourself. And in the end, I think it benefits you. And then you'll only want to be around people that are on that same level, you know, which is it'll all pay off, David. For us, it will.
I agree.
It
I
will.
agree.
Okay, why don't we
Yeah.
just wrap this up? I just wanted to say that I'm just really privileged and really honoured that you came onto the podcast to share this story. I know you came on last season, but this is like the real truth, the real you. And I also wanted to just say that I'm so proud of you and watching how, like, I haven't met you in real life because we don't, but just how far
Yeah.
you've come in your progression,
Yeah.
and that I know that you'll overcome all this. And I think it's so commendable. And I also think it's so brave and courageous to actually speak out about this stuff, because I know it's not just you. A lot of people are like pussies and they won't own it, but I know it's not just you. And this will help people that actually genuinely need to feel not alone in this. So
Yeah.
I think you're a
Absolutely.
goddamn hero.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I mean that. You know, I don't lie.
Yeah. I believe you.
You
I
know it,
believe
you
you.
know it.
I believe you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And you're doing well on your journey as well. So
Well, we're
right
all
back
just
at you.
trying, aren't we?
Some of us are.
Yeah, the good ones are.